Hello, welcome to Longevity Live. My name is Dr. Pre, and today is September 25th, 2025. I'm a practicing longevity doctor, and I'm giving you my reactions to weekly longevity news, as well as helping some folks out there looking for longevity help with the Longevity Hotline. So, let me go ahead and share my screen, give you my quick intro, and we'll dive right into everything that we have queued up for this week. Just to kick it off, a little shameless plug. This is our Vita Veda YouTube channel. Please give us a subscribe, give us a like, tell me your comments. Love to hear from you, love to help out. Vita Veda is my longevity practice. Here is our Twitter account. We're posting all of our videos on Twitter as well, if you prefer to check it out there with captions. And our Substack, if you want to read about what's happening, get it in your inbox, make it a little bit more convenient. We're going to have it there as well. So please, if you enjoy this, share it with someone you love. And like I said, I'd love to hear from you and hear what is on your mind. Now, let's jump right into the stories. We're kicking it off with the longevity hotline. A lot of people are out there looking for longevity advice. Not a lot of longevity doctors. You get a few snippets here and there on Reddit and on Twitter, but I think having it talked out is helpful. So here on the Peter Attia subreddit, what we are seeing is a person in their early 30s, business owner who flies a lot, constantly traveling for work, not sleeping that well, stressed, probably just putting all that strain on your body, even if you're not feeling it mentally. And recently got a checkup with their physician. Here are their results. First, before we even dive into that, I want to say kudos, congrats to this person for taking that step to get everything checked. This is the first step. Getting that data is what you need to do so you understand what your situation is. You may find out you're in great shape. You may find out there are some places to improve, but being in the dark is the worst situation to be in. So again, kudos. I really am glad that they took that step to dive into it. And they're doing it in their 30s. A lot of people don't wait until their 40s. So that's great as well. And I was excited to talk through this in the hotline because this is exactly the type of exactly type of person that I'm focused on helping. Someone who is not going to be able to radically change their life. They're not going to be able, maybe they're having sales meetings. They're not going to be able to just stop eating at 4 p.m. so they can, whatever, meet their fasting window because they have work, they have obligations, they have other things in their life they want to do. And remember, this is about health span. This is about quality of life. This is about your health supporting the life you want to live, not living as long as possible for some badge of honor. Now, some people enjoy that. That's great. They should do that, but it's not for everybody. So for most people, we need to take baby steps into changing their health and compound that over years and years and years. This is a key message I say with all of my patients, and I hope it resonates with you all too. And really, he's asking this, or I shouldn't say he, this person is asking that. They're trying to figure out where to go from here. What would be the next steps to prioritize, right? They understand there may be more than one thing to change, but not doing a complete overhaul. Let's just get started. And what you'll hear if you read through some of the comments, that I understand where people are coming from. They're saying, well, you should probably work less. You got to invest in your health. It's time to stop. Look, all of that is true, but even if this person wants to do that, they may not be able to drop everything in the next week or month or maybe even year and do that. They have other obligations. It's not that simple. So the question is, how do we sequence these things and determine what are the best things to focus on and really get that motivation? And the first thing I would say to this person whose screen name is OK Literature 27 is envision your future. Try to really connect with that long-term goal. What do you want to do in your 70s, 80s, 90s? Who do you want to spend time with? What will you enjoy then? And really see that in your mind, because that's going to be that little spark, that flame that pushes you through some of the changes you'll have to make. Now, these are not going to be crazy changes, but any change requires effort, requires motivation. So that's going to be key. Okay, next, I think you just got to start feeling better. I can't imagine. I read through the comments here. This person says they're sleeping 3 to 4 hours a night at times. Like that. Here we go. 3 to 4 hours a night, late nights, early morning. Like that's got to be tough. Okay, so I'll tell you right now, there is the biggest thing that we're seeing here, and we'll go through some of the numbers, is metabolic disease. Okay. Sleep is going to be a major driving factor for your metabolic disease. And it's one of those really important, what I call lead dominoes. If you can fix sleep, it'll help you fix the other things because you'll have more discipline, right? So, first thing I would say off the bat is let's get sleep up to something like 5 to 6 hours a night. And I've had patients in this situation before, well, even a couple extra hours of night, like at a minimum. I understand, okay, fine, maybe there's a really bad night where you can't get it. That's fine. But we're going to aim for an average of 5 to 6 and really try to avoid those 3 or 4 hours of sleep nights. This is going to help your metabolic health. It's going to bring down your cortisol. I know they measured AM cortisol, but this is notoriously inconsistent and hard, difficult to look into or really interpret. So although it's really only useful if it's super low, it's supposed to be kind of normal or high in the morning to get you to wake up. So you're sleeping 3 to 4 hours a night, you're going to be jacked up. You're going to have a lot of adrenaline, you're going to have a lot of cortisol, and it's going to be impossible to manage your blood glucose levels in that situation. Okay, so first thing is sleep. If you ask me, prioritize that with sleep. Secondly is nutrition. You're busy. It doesn't take any time to eat healthier, right? If you have the resources, get somebody to make the meals for you. Depending on where you're flying to, there may be healthy options. In a lot of large cities, there are healthy options. Here in the US, Chicago, New York, Miami, or Los Angeles, you go to any of these places, you can find healthy options where you don't have to spend a lot of time. So just a little bit of preparation. And again, if you have resources, can meal prep, that will make that super helpful. But again, it'll start with sleep, because if you're sleep deprived and you're stressed, you're going to reach for something that has that lower glycemic index. Um, the higher glycemic index, because your brain is wanting that fuel. It's just going to be really difficult to get away from that. Okay. And then from there, you could start layering on easy exercise. Like building muscle is going to help with that metabolic health. When I say easy exercise, do 2 sets of push-ups 3 days a week. You can do that anywhere, in any hotel room. It take you 5 minutes. Doing that consistently is going to really show benefit over time. Again, this is about consistency, not intensity. The goal is to get 20, 30, 40% better and sustain that over decades until you can change the underlying problem, which here is the job. Like, you're not going to be fully healthy until you can free up more time for yourself. And that's okay. You may need to do this for the next 5 years, and that's fine. But at least start, keep measuring your biomarkers as you've been doing, and get to that next level. So these are the big lessons I want to say here. This is a little bit less about, the exact details of the biomarkers, but more about how do you layer on these habits in a way, what I call layered longevity. How do you layer this on in a way so that you get to your goal? So by the time you're 40, you feel great. Your health is doing really well. Maybe by doing this, you forced your business into a situation where it's a little bit more sustainable for you. That is the true goal. So let's look at some of the numbers, though. BMI 35, severely obese. I feel like this is a pejorative term, but yes, that is obese. Visceral fat, we definitely want that to be within the goal. This person is probably not in the US based on the metrics I'm seeing here. But that all speaks to metabolic health. A few other things. This hemoglobin A1C, where is it? I'll find it. Here we go. Hemoglobin A1C 42. Here's a calculator that translates into a 6 in the units that we normally see. That is in the pre-diabetic range. So they mentioned that this is borderline impaired. We would call that impaired from a longevity standpoint. This is fully impaired. So and then the GGT, which was elevated, it's somewhere in here, that also suggests some fatty liver disease. Here we go. And they said the AST, ALT were normal, but if that ALT is greater than 25, that also suggests metabolic disorder. And the triglycerides of 1.13 translates to about 100 in the US. It's actually lower than I would have expected, given the rest of the picture, but all of that speaks to metabolic disease. That's going to be the number one factor right now. I will tell you, there's something going on with the cholesterol numbers here that I'm not able to translate them. They don't quite add up. This LDL, based on my conversion, was something like 60. So that doesn't really add up with the rest of the picture unless this person has amazing genetics or is already on some medication, but hard to interpret that and tell you if that is an issue at the moment. What else? Diet wise, well, let's keep going through these numbers and then I'll kind of summarize it. So HSCRP of 8.36. Look, the inflammation is high, but know that this can be transient. I actually had a patient who was a financial a hedge fund manager, was really stressed, had an HSCRP of 8, and then we rechecked it after after a month on vacation, and it was down to 1. So we don't necessarily need to chase this. This could literally just be from stress and sleep deprivation. ESR of 25 also suggests inflammation in the body. So that's pretty consistent. Talked about the cholesterol numbers. Vitamin D of 43. I want to just point out, and I'll link to this in the show notes. We don't actually know if 43 is insufficient. There's competing data on this. Really, we don't have a good trial that shows this. The range from 30 to 80 is all we truly know. So I wouldn't stress this too much. Because you're probably in that normal range. And again, this is just a gap in the information that we have currently as a medical world. Estradiol being high. So, fat cells convert testosterone into estradiol. They have something called aromatase. This is actually pretty consistent not just in men, but in anybody. Fat cells will lead to higher estrogen levels. So losing weight and specifically losing body fat will help drop that. And not much else to say. And in terms of the gut test, this is a point I wanted to make on nutrition. I say improve nutrition. Fiber is going to be your friend. It'll make you feel good. It'll make you feel full. You will feel good. You'll have great bowel movements, and it'll also help reduce the cholesterol, even if you're not high. Some people estimate that in the hunter-gatherer days, we were eating something like 100 grams of fiber per day. Most people at least in the US, I can't speak to where this person lives, they're getting less than like 20 grams per day. I think 30 is a bare minimum, 50 is a good target. And that should help with all of this gut biodiversity. And as a side note, right now, most physicians don't know what to do with this information. They see it, they can say, okay, that's interesting, but like, how do you change it? And then when do you recheck it to see if it's changed? That's always a bit of a challenge with these microbiome tests, at least at the moment. Okay, so to summarize, and again, many of my patients are in this situation. You might say, well, I need that, I can't sleep an extra hour or two a night. What about work? Well, what I found in my experience with my patients is you sleep better, you think better, you find more efficient ways to do things. And I understand that you might be in a sprint for a few weeks or maybe even a couple months where you really can't sleep any more than that. But most people can. And once they do and they start feeling better, they get that time back. And that's what I would really suggest here. Because I don't know the situation, but over the next 6 months, I have to imagine there's a way to get a couple more hours of sleep and it won't be devastating to the business. And maybe it will slow it down a little bit, but maybe that's worth it. So number 1, sleep. Number 2, nutrition. Number 3, start getting exercise in and continue to keep checking these. Check these every 6 months at a minimum. Keep yourself on track. I know they said they're getting a Whoop. Get the Whoop. But honestly, I think the only real metric you need to look at from the Whoop right now is how many hours of sleep are you getting. So that's the longevity hotline. Hope this is helpful. OK Literature 27 and anyone else who listens in. Let's move on to the next story. Creatine. Creatine's been hot. Creatine's been hot for a while. And here is a tweet from someone named Simland, who actually has a great a great profile here, does a lot of content on keeping you be healthy. So I'm doing some pull-ups with kettlebells, and I was like, wow, this is I need to get to that level. There we go. some kettlebell pull-ups. That is not me at the moment. This person looks very strong, and as I said, very informative. But I want to talk about this post here. Creatine is not just a sports supplement. It has broader health benefits. And this is really, if you all have been listening to me, I like to look at information that's being put out there and say, what can we glean from this information and what can we not glean? What can we not really say from this information? So they've cited a study that I've looked up. I wanted to dive deeper into it. And I am not going to refute the conclusions of this study or even talk about creatine. There's a lot of data on creatine. I haven't reviewed all of it. I have my trusted sources who I think have good viewpoints on this, but that is not the point. The goal here is to show you how you can tell if a study's results apply to you in 1 minute. And the scientific term for this is generalizability. Does this generalize to you? So PubMed ID. kudos to Simland or Seam, sorry if I'm pronouncing that wrong, for sharing this PubMed ID. What do you do? All right, well, let's go to PubMed. This is a US database. It's already on there, but you can just type in this number, search it. It'll take you straight to this trial. It is a randomized controlled trial, a little bit misleading. We won't get into that. We won't get into that today. But I have pulled it up here. One thing that's really nice is beyond the abstract, we actually have the full text. So we can go ahead and click on the full text here. And what you want to do, if you want to figure out who does this study apply to, is go to the methods and figure out the study participants. So who actually was in this study? Well, let's take a look. There were men and postmenopausal women. They're aged 50 to 64 years old, and they reported low habitual physical activity levels, less than 150 minutes a week. Now, we don't know if that means 10 minutes a week, 40, 80, hard to say. And it was a pilot study, right? We'll come back to that. There are older adults with low habitual activity were selected because lifelong exercises exhibit greater arterial compliance and sustained vascular health. Now, if we go back to Seam Land's post here, he correctly identifies what they're looking at: vascular endothelial function, microvascular reperfusion rates, fasting glucose, triglycerides. So basically, like, how stiff are your arteries? Does creatine help loosen them up and increase that blood flow? And does it help with fasting glucose and triglycerides? Okay. So, but the study, the folks in the study, they even said people who work out probably already have better vascular health. So we're not interested in that. All right, great. So who do they exclude? They excluded basically anybody with any disease possible. No kidney disease, no high blood pressure, no presence of cardiovascular disease, no metabolic disease, no other chronic diseases, no medications that would interfere with circulation, and obviously, and people no tobacco, no creatinine. All right, so before we even get into the results or even talk about, in fact, I'm not even going to talk about them. The question is, do the results of the study apply to you? Do they generalize? Well, if you are not a 50 to 64-year-old man or postmenopausal woman who gets less than 150 minutes of quote unquote moderate physical activity per week, and if you have zero health problems, if you have any health problems, this does not apply to you, right? It's a very narrow range of people that this actually applies to. And that is the key. So you can very quickly determine whether or not you should pay attention to this or if this would apply to you. And you might say, well, maybe it applies to people who are outside of that study. So it depends on what they're finding, depends on what they're studying. Now it gets a little bit more complex. But I can tell you, if you are a 25-year-old, this probably doesn't apply to you. Or if you are a 50-year-old, but you are working out, 45 minutes a day, this probably doesn't apply to you. Does that mean that creatine doesn't work or is not helpful? No, it doesn't mean that at all. It just means we can't reach a lot of conclusions from this specific study. And that is the point. All right. And beyond that, I feel like I have to mention there's only 12 people in this study. Even the authors call it a pilot. Even though it was a randomized controlled trial, it doesn't actually tell us too much because with only 12 people, this study could have randomly some biases included in it. Like you need like 1,200 to be able to really tell. And there's some other flaws with it: self-reported data. How much do these people actually work out? How do we know that the people in the placebo group weren't actually taking creatine, even though they said they weren't? There's all sorts of questions that come to mind. And then what about all the people who do have high blood pressure or chronic kidney disease or anything like that? Is it helpful for them? So overall, I think good to show the study. What do I don't really feel like I learned much from it. And it certainly doesn't generalize to me, given that I am not in that patient population. All right, a couple of news stories. Oura Ring raising almost $1 billion to be valued as a $11 billion company. And I'm sorry here, I thought I had access to this, but the fundraise, I'll tell you the TLDR, it's basically to expand internationally. They are not doing an AI data play, but they have data on millions of people. So I suspect in the future that is coming. And more broadly, this is to me showing the continued trend towards longevity and health tracking by consumers, which, we're going to have to figure out what to do with that data. Ask me questions. I can help you with that. But certainly it's cool to see the technology helping people stay healthy, because beyond just what does the data mean, it helps nudge people towards healthier habits. And I think that's fantastic to see this happening in the culture. I think it's less about what Oura Ring is doing and more about what consumers want that is driving the success that Oura Ring is having. So cool to see that. All right. I don't know how, but I keep somehow finding articles about people who are very old, at least by traditional standards, doing awesome things. And I love this. So here's a 90-year-old martial artist. He's won his ninth degree black belt, I believe, in karate. He's in Pennsylvania. And clearly, if he's still doing karate at the age of 90, he's doing pretty well. Why do I keep bringing up these stories? Because this is just another way to inspire you to take a long-term approach, make those small changes and compound them over time. It certainly inspires me. The last few weeks we've seen, I think it was a 95-year-old lady who's still really active in Washington. There was the 80-year-old who ran a 135-mile race. I mean, these are amazing anecdotes. I think really awesome to see, and good to keep in mind that, yeah, there's many people who get there. It's not just about having these perfect genetics. What does this gentleman attribute it to? Well, he attributes it to learning every day and his martial arts practice, and his wife. And by the way, he's been in martial arts for 42 years. That means he didn't start till he was 48. That's pretty cool. It is not too late. You can keep it going, get to your goals. Finally, ending on a very positive note, there is a promising gene therapy that showed in 3/4 of patients that received it a reduction in Huntington's disease progression. This is out of the University College of London. It's an experimental treatment, AMT 130. Part of the reason this is really cool is Huntington's treatment is very difficult to manage. Huntington's disease is very difficult to manage. It's a neurodegenerative disease. It's passed on to people's kids 50% of the time. And it's very disruptive, starts in middle life. You have these sort of uncontrolled movements that are very characteristic of the disease. And it's up until very recently, we didn't know how to do anything about it. So awesome to see that we are getting some progression here in Huntington's disease. Hopefully we continue to get more good news, and this does work at scale. It doesn't affect too many people, about 100,000 Americans, but still very genetically driven and very, very disruptive. And these people's lifespans are cut short when they have this disease. Okay. Well, that is it, friends. This was Longevity Live. I hope you enjoyed it. As always, this is not medical advice. Please go see a licensed medical professional if you are having any issues, but meant to be educational only. And please like, subscribe, and comment, and share with a loved one if you found this helpful. I really appreciate you all. I will see you next week.